Good evening. Welcome to Left, Right and Centre. I'm Vishnu Shom. On the programme this evening, a resounding 64.66% of voters braved, a relative winter chill to seal the fate of 121 seats in Bihar. It's not just higher than the 2020 tally, it is the highest ever voter turnout in the history of Bihar, and that's fantastic news. Raghopur, there were long queues there in Mukama, in Tarapur. They all told the story of a democracy on fire. With the last ballot cast, all eyes now pivot to Tuesday, the 11th of November. That's when Phase 2 will decide the remaining 122 seats across 20 districts, from Simanchal's border belts to the caste cauldrons of Magad. Over 3.67 crore electors, 1,302 candidates, 45,000 booths. The numbers are astounding. They stand ready. Under a webcast, under the cover of paramilitary forces. Will Nitish Kumar's NDA hold its fortress? Can Tejaswi's Mahagathbandhan flip the script? Or will Prashant Kishore's Jan Suraj spring the upset? So counting day, remember, November the 14th, it looms just 8 days away from us. But I thought an interesting way of starting this program is the big news development out of Bihar, and it's come in just a little while back. 64.66% of voters came out to seal the fate of 121 seats. I've got Sandeep Shastri with me, Ashok Malik, Shubhrashtra and Ajit Kumar Jha. Thank you all very much for being with us. Let me put that question across to Sandeep Shastri. Professor Shastri, are you there at the moment? All right, we don't have him at the moment, but what I can do is actually describe the leaderboard for our viewers to give you an idea of what's going to happen in Phase 2, because the bulk of what we are trying to do in this program, right, is to look ahead. Phase 1 is done. We'll try and get an explanation for the very high voter turnout and what that means. But let's take a look at what exactly Phase 2, the next phase, actually has in terms of prospects. So let's break it up for you, give you an idea of the map as well. And Phase 2 covers the areas that you see in the map over here. And what you see is what was the performance of the parties in 2020. And this is what the alliance performance was. So all across areas, and you can see the saffron over here is the NDA, the Mahagathbandhan in green over here. There were others who are marked in grey. So the NDA quite clearly was the dominant party in 2020 in terms of alliance. And if you take a look at the party-wise breakup over here, then again, it's the BJP which was dominant, the entire saffron belt that you can see to the north of the state along the border with Nepal. In other areas spread out, the dark green is actually the RJD with 33 seats last time around. The BJP had 42. So the dark green seats were seats won by the RJD here in the southern belt, and the JDU coming in third last time around at 20 seats. So that was what the broad position last time around was. But what I'd like to do, and since we've got our panelists now up with us, is go across to Professor Sandeep Shastri first with the basic question. 64.66% of voters braved, the relative cold, came out early in the morning, came out through the day in Phase 1 to vote today. What is the significance of it? What can we infer, if anything?
Vishnu, for me, the most important significance of this 10% plus increase of voter turnout, I think, is the victory of democracy and the victory of the common voter in Bihar. She has asserted herself. He has made it a point to make his voice heard. What are its implications politically? I think there is no empirical data in the last elections to prove that higher voter turnout either helps the incumbent or helps the challenger. There is data on both sides for higher turnout helping the incumbent or helping the challenger. But in the case of Bihar, I would like to draw your attention to two factors which I think will be crucial. When you talk of higher voting, is that voting significantly higher among men, or is it higher among women?
Okay, hold that thought, because that's what we're doing in this program, Professor Shastri. We're going to be looking at Phase 2 and looking ahead. The women factor, absolutely critical. In fact, I'm going to start up looking at the key X factors in phase 2. And let's bring up these graphics. Look at what the 2020 situation was. The woman voter, all important. If you take the Bihar Assembly elections of 2020, compare it with what the situation was in 2015, and you look at it from a gender standpoint, 37% of women voted for the Mahagathbandhan, right? 38% of men did that. So approximately the same in terms of where it was in 2020. That went down a little bit from where it was equally split between women and men in 2015. The NDA, 38%, so marginally ahead in terms of women, so quite evenly split in 2020 in phase 2, and the NDA at 36%, others that you can see over there. Now that has changed somewhat. There's been a 5% hike among women favoring the NDA. That's gone up to 38 from where it was in 2015 at 33%. And it's more or less the same for the NDA among men. So 35% in 2015. Last time around, it was at 36%. So that's where it was in terms of the gender divide, as it were, or the gender split in the elections. But let's look at it from a caste standpoint right now. Now, predictably, and let's focus mostly on 2020, predictably upper castes voted for the NDA, for the BJP, and the Yadavs primarily, as you can expect, went the Mahagathbandhan way, and it was, an overwhelming number over there. So this is where women voted in terms of caste in 2020. 63% in the other OBC category went to the NDA. 33% of Dalits went to the NDA, 24% to the Mahagathbandhan, and among Muslims, it was dominant as far as the Mahagathbandhan was concerned. This is how women voted if you look at it from a caste perspective. Again, now, when we talk about women, we have to look at young women as well. And if we look at the group between 18 to 40, right, and the way it actually panned out, this is interesting because in the category 18 to 29, 36% voted, right, in terms of gender, 36% voted for the Mahagathbandhan, 39% voted in 2020 for the Mahagathbandhan as far as men were concerned, and that number of men is exactly the same as it was in this other group in 30 to 39. So whether it's in the 18 to 29 bracket or the 30 to 39 bracket, men approximately in phase 2 account for 39% of support for the Mahagathbandhan. If you take a look at the NDA, it's 40%. In 18 to 29, approximately the same, just 1% lower, right? In those who are slightly older at 30 to 39, but it's identical. 30 in the 30 to 39 age bracket, 39% of voters actually end up voting for the NDA. This is for women and men. This is the youth vote, as it were, by gender. Let's take a look at the 2020 voter turnout. And this is a fascinating map because if you move to the areas marked green or even greener, right, so into the dark green, that indicates where there have been a larger number of women voters. The areas which are there in orange, predominantly more men. So the women turnout was higher than men in 167 out of 243 seats. So more than half, well more than half of all of the seats in phase 2, in the 2020 Assembly polls, you had a women turnout which was higher than men. And that's very significant. This is an overall in terms of the whole election, phase 1 and phase 2. In 2020, out of 167 seats, where the women turnout was more, 95 were won by the NDA. So the NDA, again, winning more seats compared to the Mahagathbandhan in those seats out of 167 where the women turnout was more. We've got, I think, one more point over here. Out of 45 seats won by the JDU, 37 witnessed a higher women turnout. Now, this perhaps is no surprise. The JDU and Nitish's politics have always had the woman voter in mind, not just in the last elections, but for over a period of time. Overall, the JDU got 15.4% of the Nari Shakti vote, but the share was 16.6%, where the turnout of women was higher. Let me take a question to Shubhrashtra on this. Shubhrashtra, we were talking about this in the morning. In fact, we don't have Shubhrashtra as yet. Let's just go take this to Ashok Malik. How significant is the woman vote this time around? All of the formations, all of the political parties obviously have been reaching out to women, but these are areas where, for example, the JDU has had a real stronghold in the past. How do you see this dynamic playing out in phase 2 in these elections?
Thanks, Vishnu. Vishnu, just go back to some of the numbers you quoted a few minutes ago. Even the relative bump in the Mahagathbandhan women vote in 2015 was actually a Nitish bump, because if you recall, Nitish was with the Mahagathbandhan in 2015, and of course, in 2020 he moved to the NDA. So clearly, the woman voter in Bihar for the past 15 odd years has followed Nitish, been loyal to Nitish. And if I don't see that fundamentally changing this time, the high turnout today would indicate that at least to Nitish's voters are still with him.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean Lalu's voters or Tejaswi's voters are not with them. But I think it would give Nitish some hope that his women voters have turned out once again, because obviously if there is a large turnout, it is expected there's also a large women voter turnout.
Shubhrashtra, in terms of various schemes which have been announced by the Mahagathbandhan on the one hand and the NDA on the other, how have they really taken the woman voter into account this time around? And, looking ahead into phase 2.
Vishnu, I think let's acknowledge the fact that Nitish Kumar very early on cultivated a dedicated and a secular vote bank among women when he started with the initial scheme of sending girls to school through the bicycle Yojana. Thereafter, once the girls educated themselves and once they were eligible for government jobs, he was the first chief minister in the country to ensure that 35% of jobs were reserved for women. For the first time it happened, and then later on, of course, many state governments followed suit. Also at local level, the in panchayat elections, 50% of reservations were given to women. Now, beyond all of this, Nitish Kumar also ensured, going away from his ideological sort of a straight mold, he created Jivika Didis. Today, when Jivika Didis are being given 10,000 rupees by the central government, or when Jivika Didis are being assured that they would be given 30,000 rupees by the by Mahagathbandhan and specifically Tejasvi Yadav, it is an acknowledgement of the silent revolution that Nitish Kumar as chief minister led for more than a decade.
Sure.
In that respect, when we see the voting percentage rising and incrementally we see women voters having a larger say election after election since 2015, I think it really goes on to show that in politics, beyond the usual communal secular or the capitalist socialist paradigm, there is a fundamental shift in which politicians should look at women voters. I think it would be interesting to see if the women voters who are anyway extremely assertive in their choices start demanding political accountability within the the political parties, individual political parties, and start demanding for more seats in terms of fighting it.
No, absolutely. And, just reflecting briefly on phase 1, where we've seen 64.66% of voters out there, it would be fascinating to get the actual split of men and women this time around, because one way or the other, that's going to be a dominant factor. I just want to quickly move on to the next couple of points. We're looking at X factors, and we're doing it quite fast on this program. We're looking next at youth employment and the entire issue of migration. We've got a couple of data points to actually show you. Firstly, in terms of the Bihar electorate, this is what the age is. This is what the age-wise sort of look is. If you look at, those who are very young, 20 to 29, 22% of the electorate are in that age group between 20 to 29, 30 to 40. So you're still considered young if you're 40. That's 29%. So the it's a very, very large number. More than 50% of the electorate this time around, men and women in Bihar, right, are between the ages of 20 and 40. And I'm not even looking at 18 to 19 years of age. They add to that. The next point that we have, as we discuss the entire issue of youth and migration, because it does really impact young people at the onset, is where does Bihar stand in terms of overall migration patterns across the country? Let's roll that graphic. Uttar Pradesh is number one with 8.4 crore. Bihar, I think, is the second. Let's have all of the other states up as well. Bihar is the second largest in terms of the migration of people. And therefore, this is another critical factor. So, Ajit Kumar Jha, in terms of the schemes which have been announced, we've got the Mahagathbandhan saying that they're promising one job for family. The NDA has spoken about a 50 lakh crore investment in infrastructure. How critical is this to actually cut down on migration, which is a really big issue for millions across the state?
Look, Vishnu, the median age of Bihar is 22, and for the rest of the country, it is 28. More than half the voters in Bihar are under the age of 35. So basically, jobs, or lack of jobs, if you want to put it, is the biggest issue in this election. I'm sitting in Purnia right now. Yeah. I just returned from Kishanganj, and I and Rahul, we have been moving around. Yep. We talked to a number of people, and all the time they talk about lack of jobs. That's the biggest agenda in Bihar elections, and related to that, the out-migration of the youth. And that is what I would argue is causing the vote for change, if you want to use that phrase instead of, let's say, an anti-incumbency. It's mainly because of lack of jobs and out-migration. They are totally linked. Now, what is happening, as you talked about, as the previous speaker pointed out, there is a very large constituency in favor of Nitish Kumar, and that are the women voters. They have been with Nitish for a while because of the various schemes that you guys have discussed already, and that is still intact with Nitish Kumar. On top of that, Nitish Kumar has also built a marvelous coalition of 36% extremely backward caste voters. So that also stays largely intact, except for maybe the Mallah community. Yeah. And in the areas that we moved, the Mallah community is actually very important in the second phase of the election. And so are the Muslim voters, because we are right now sitting in Simanchal. Right. So you see, basically what you see, the generational lack of jobs, anti-incumbency is being cut by the pro-incumbency by the women. And finally, we will know on the 14th whether one beat the other. Yes, Vishnu.
Let's take a look at the next key point that I want to discuss over here. It's the entire allegation or set of allegations as far as corruption is concerned. This was almost synonymous with politics in Bihar, the entire politics of Jungle Raj and corruption allegations. Ashok, let me come to you for this. To what extent is this a real factor? For example, if you take a look at some of the areas which are going to polls in the second phase, the liquor mafia, the sad mafia, that really gives the Jan Swaraj a leg up in terms of what they've been saying, that corruption is still a major factor. The NDA Sushasana image is also something that needs to bear up. Is it strong enough to be accepted by the voter? I know it's changed over a period of time, but is corruption a major issue in your mind?
See, two things here. One, I don't think anyone believes Nitish Kumar is personally corrupt.
Right.
Has the prohibition sort of program ended up breeding corruption? Yes, it has. Having said that, are the restrictions on liquor sales popular? They are popular. Both are correct. And if Nitish Kumar does lose this election, he will not lose because people think he's corrupt. Not at all. In the case of the perception among the upper caste or the urbanites in Bihar, or those who are lean towards governance issues, the perception that Lalu and the Lalu years saw a heightened corruption remains a factor. It is causing Tejasvi, even though Tejasvi has never been in power himself, on his own, that is, he was Deputy Chief Minister under Nitish, it is causing Tejasvi to not be able to expand the RJD beyond Muslims and Yadavs. They are solidly with him, but the perception of corruption in the RJD ranks, or the RJD legacy, or the RJD DNA, whether correct or incorrect, the fact is it is causing him to not be able to expand to another significant community beyond these two. And that is an obstacle for him.
Okay, quick couple of points. I just want to go through these. The special intensive revision, the SIR of voter rolls. Let's have that up on our screen. And the voter deletion, which we can actually show you from a region-wise basis. Is the SIR going to be a factor? Is it a talking point in these elections? It really depends on the political parties, what you're actually saying. Now, if you take a look at all of these areas, Simanchal, Bhojpur, Anga Pradesh, Mithilanchal, Tirhut and Magad, the average reduction, for example, has been 4.89% across all of these areas. The drop in voters has been 15,809 in terms of the state average. Obviously, there are some areas where the actual numbers are much larger, but that's what the average reduction is. And so will this actually bear out? Is it something which, and it's dominated the politics of the opposition in the state, but will it actually have an impact on the ground? We're going to have to wait and see. But what I would like to finally, as I wrap up this program, and just on that, remember 65 lakh names were deleted, 18 lakh names were added in Bihar. But just the final point that I want to look at is education policy and the entire issue of exam leaks. This is such a critical point, and I'm going to take that one final question across to Shubhrashtra. Competitive elections, competitive education and examinations, I should say, is so very important. The fact that you've got alienation of students at educational hubs, Motihari, for example, is one of them. And you're talking about youth, you're talking about young women, you're talking about migration, it all ties together. And I think the ultimate goal is, if I'm educated, no matter how difficult it may be, I want a job. So therefore, if that education system, the competitive system itself, is faulty, as has been reported so many times in the past, do you see this being an issue among young voters? Shubhrashtra.
In terms of Vishnu, in terms of narrative, of course, it's a huge issue among the youth of Bihar, as it should be. But I want to take you back to the migration question, because I think there's one issue which gets completely unaddressed or underaddressed. RJD has historically positioned migration as proof of structural discrimination against Bihar by the union. However much of an emotional resonance this narrative has, especially among rural poor who send their sons to Punjab's fields or Gulf construction camps, this frame is incomplete. Migration was not only an exodus of the laboring poor in Bihar, Bihar also exported its aspirational class: engineers, doctors, civil servants, entrepreneurs, journalists, academics, professionals who built their futures outside their home state, often reluctantly, because, and this is where the whole education system question comes in, because this migration was aspirational, not survivalist. And I remember during the time when we were growing up, and college education was completely unthinkable, because our cohort saw that talent did not find the ecosystem that we deserved at home.
Yeah.
It is this cohort that saw its roots in fray, not because poverty was an issue, but because Bihar's public life, administrative culture, law and order climate made ambition feel unsafe. It was unviable to think of staying in Bihar and doing things that we are doing right now.
Sure.
This departure was not economic leakage, as RJD is making it to be. This was civilizational and cultural attrition. Therefore, this needs to be addressed, and to attract this aspirational class back, a political formation, any political formation for that matter, must first acknowledge, why did Biharis leave?
No, I think that's absolutely critical, and I think it's there are a host of reasons. But I think so much of this election, and I think it goes back to what was mentioned earlier on this program is where are the jobs? And anybody who can actually live up to the promise of delivering that, then so many of these issues are addressed. This is just a snapshot of what's going to happen in phase 2. Phase 1 is just such a welcome sign that 64.6% of voters have gotten out there and voted. It's going to be a crackerjack election. Let's see where it goes. I'd like to thank all of you very much for being with us.